Good morning. Thank you all for being here. This is the second keynote session of the AI week that we're having. And we're so privileged to have Mr. Dave Copps today to talk about future of AI and AI technologies. So if you heard yesterday from Dr. Mark's keynote speech about what AI is not, then you'll hear today what AI is and what AI will be. So let me give a brief introduction of Mr. Copps. Dave Copps is an internationally known as a technologist and visionary, leading the charge in leveraging deep tech to transform markets and shape the future of our world. He has founded 2 AI companies and sold them in the past in machine learning and artificial intelligence. The technologies that the companies have generated are used in thousands of companies throughout the world. He was recently awarded Ernst Young's Entrepreneur of the Year for the Central Plains region. And while serving as a CEO of his previous company, BrainSpace, he was recognized as Emerging Company CEO of the Year in Texas. Dave currently serves as the CEO of The Worlds, where he leads the company in building the enterprise platform for real-world AI. The Worlds platform empowers organizations to radically improve productivity, efficiency, and safety by deploying AI-based automation directly into their physical operations. Mr. Copps received his BA from the University of North Texas, and he is an invited member of Aspen Institute's Roundtable on AI, the X Prize Visioneering Board, and the U.S. Government's Council for Competitiveness. He's also a member of Capital Factory Partner and a frequent speaker on AI and startups at conferences, universities, and incubators worldwide. I had an opportunity to listen to him at the Engineering Deans Institute. Yearly, we get together engineering deans throughout the nation to talk about engineering issues, and I think you will really enjoy what he has to say about the future of AI. So without further ado, would you join me in welcoming Dave Copps to this stage?
Thanks. Thanks so much. Thanks, Dean Pack. I always hate that part because marketing departments will say a lot about you that you would never say about yourself. It's kind of funny. I think I've kind of grown up in AI in a funny way. In college, AI was still kind of a burgeoning thing, but nothing like it is today. And but I was even fascinated by it back then. Today, any way you slice it, today we're living in a really extraordinary time. I mean, it's the limitations of what's possible are just kind of floating away, and the only thing that's limiting us is really us, and what we choose to do and how we choose to augment ourselves with AI. I think, so my experience is really maybe different from a lot of people you'll hear because I'm more of a practitioner. So I'm not an academic. I'm someone that's been kind of my own student of AI, but I also am delivering AI into enterprise environments today. And I consider myself more of a student, though, because I think this technology is changing so radically every day. And doing presentations like this is getting harder and harder because it used to change it like 3 times a year, and now you have to change it every 2 weeks. So today I hope to kind of give you, I'm not a doomer. I'm not a person that thinks AI is going to destroy society. So you won't hear that from me today. You can go to any 2-bit conference and hear that conversation. I'm more of an optimist about what's possible, but also keeping that in mind, understanding what we're dealing with. It's very different. It's a very different thing than we've ever seen before. So you talked about what I've done. I mean, I'm more of just an entrepreneur. So I'm driven by what's possible. So with AI, that's become a really interesting place to be because so much is possible. So we put AI into companies all over the world. My current company is called Worlds, and Worlds is actually working on a very different problem than most people. Most AI, like ChatGPT and stuff like that, is back office AI. We're actually bringing AI out of the back office and putting it into the real world. So how can we actually start to connect to a company's existing cameras and sensors and IoT devices, and give AI the ability to learn about these physical environments in ways that have never been possible before. Like giving people superpowers, the ability to see all of your locations simultaneously and understanding which ones are working, which ones aren't, taking things that are working and being able to kind of, now the real world becomes a data stream, taking that and just cutting and pasting it in all your environments. But this idea of bringing AI into the real world is kind of what we're working on with Worlds. My wife says I start businesses because I'm unemployable. I think she's probably right. I just have a really low tolerance for stasis, so I'm a person that likes to keep moving, and my nature of being is to try things that people say can't be done. I love that. That's the ultimate challenge for me. In my company, we actually play something we call impossible games. And I kind of made this up, but impossible games are just like putting an engineering department on a problem that they don't think can be solved, right? And it may or may not work, but I'll tell you right now, about 70% of the time we've done it, it's worked. But it changes the way people think. When you're trying things that have never been done before, and you can be coupled with a technology like AI, you can be given an acceleration and an amplification that you've never had before. It changes how you think about problems. So the way you approach a problem that's impossible is very different on something that's incremental. You have to think differently. You have to think in leaps, and you can do that with AI. And so it's become a pretty fun time. So to put a context, is this not sharing? Here we go. Okay. I think the next 10 years will, from a point of progress, will be equivalent to what the last 100 years looked like. And the way we work will change more than it has in the last 500 years. And we talked about this at breakfast this morning. We had a great breakfast with staff and faculty. And this is one of the topics we talked about. Like, just what's really going to change now is how we think. So when you go to college, right, I always thought the thing I got the most out of college was not what I learned, it was how I learned how to learn. And that's all changing now. How we learn, is changing. And so I think it's an opportunity, not a, might be getting double. It's an opportunity, not a threat, So I think, the term AI came out a long time ago in 1956. John McCarthy is kind of a famed computer scientist. But back then, artificial intelligence, it's a misnomer today. That's not what's happening. Back then, AI was something it was symbolic, and you had to program it. You told it what to learn. You told it how to execute every task. That's not what's happening today. Today's AIs are very different. Today's AIs are emergent and dynamic, and they're forming a new lens for us to see the world. Like we're able to see the world in ways we never could before. I like the breadth of AI. You think about humans. We have this ability to kind of look at a book one page at a time, where an AI can read the book all pages simultaneously. But put that kind of out in the world, right? As you start to look at problems, data as problems with an expansiveness that is not possible for humans, patterns start to show up. You can start to see things that we can't see. So even data that's been around for 100 years, looking at it with AI, will see things in that data we've never seen before. And so it's a really different thing, and so it's really one of the most transformative periods for sure. But here's something I may think a little bit differently from a lot of people, in that we tend to want to anthropomorphize AI. Like, we want it to be like us. We feel comfortable if we can say, oh, it's going to learn like us. What we're building is another biological intelligence. And that's not what's happening. I'm a firm believer that all these ideas that AI will someday be conscious or have the ability to to be self-reflective, things like that. I don't see that for AI. What we need to kind of understand is that we're building something very, very different. We're building a non-biological intelligence. That's very different from biological intelligence. There's things that we can do as humans I think AIs will never be able to do. They can mimic those things, right? And AI can mimic anything. One of my interesting experiences was I was backstage with a guy who had built the AI system for playing Texas Hold'em for blackjack. And he made the claim on stage that his system knew how to bluff. And I saw him backstage, and I kind of called him on it. I said, it's not bluffing. He goes, yes, it is. I said, no, it's not. I said, is it looking in my eyes? Is it seeing the increase in my heartbeat? Is it, He said, no. And I said, so what it's doing is mimicking bluffing. And he finally gave in. He goes, yeah, it's mimicking bluffing. And so that's going to be a real challenge for us going forward, that AIs won't be able to have, like a generalized intelligence. Like one thing that makes us uniquely human is we can walk into a new environment and see things we've never seen before, but know what we're seeing. There's a generalized intelligence that we have, a flexible generalized intelligence that AI does not have. It has to be trained on environments. Now it's going to get better and better as we give AI more and more data. But right now, we don't have AGI. Everybody says AGI is going to be here next year, and I kind of laugh because I think we don't even have agreement on what AGI is. So artificial general intelligence is what the acronym is, but we don't even have agreement on what that is. But I will tell you, for one thing, it won't have experience like we have experience. It won't be able to experience things. It doesn't have embodied cognition. It doesn't walk around and see and feel things and hear things and pull all that together into a single unified intelligence. It doesn't do that. We're not going to have that in a year. So I'm one of those that thinks AGI is something bigger. And if we hit it next year, it's not because we hit AGI, it's because we lowered what we said AGI is. Will we hit AGI? Yes, we will. And I think it'll be in years, not decades. It could even be a few years. Anyway, it's a different problem. But why is all this happening now, right? Because AI has been around, again, since 1956, right? Well, after a couple AI winters, an AI winter is just high expectations and low results, right? Low output. It didn't show up. But after a lot of that, what's really come together in a humongous way are three things, right? So it's data, compute, and then the new algorithms, right? So all of these things are increasing at exponential pace right now. And they're creating like a perfect storm, right? Because more data helps create better AIs can help us create more data. You can kind of see this interaction of all these things together creates an incredible environment. Let's look at each one of these kind of separately real quick. So first is the kind of Cambrian explosion of data, right? There's 171 zettabytes of information by next year. What's a zettabyte? So I actually did some math to make it kind of relatable. So if you're downloading on Starlink some stuff, it would take you about 43 billion years to get to 171 zettabytes. If you're streaming Netflix at 4K, it'd take you about 491 million years. So it's a lot of data. But more data has been created in the last 6 months and in the last 5,000 years. And that's about to go exponential because we're now creating data synthetically. Now, there's lots of arguments about model rot and things like that with synthetic data. If we have AI create its own data and then learn on that data, does the quality just go down? The answer right now is yes. But the longer term answer is it's getting better and better at creating good data. And we'll be there pretty soon. We can create as much data as we want. And then this year, about 60% of all data to train AI is synthetic. And that's going to go up because we're out of data. And we're also, this is kind of where my company kind of comes in, right? We're also approaching this year a trillion sensor economy. There's going to be a trillion sensors in the world, right? And each one of those sensors is now able to capture data that's never been captured before, persistently, every day, in real time, forever. So we're going to have a lot more data coming from the real world. Like once we can turn the real world into a live data stream, we'll never run out of data. And that's what's happening today. That's the problem my company's actually working on. And I think the most impressive thing to me is exponential compute. A little history. Before most of you were born, TI came out with their TMS 9900. And we're going to measure these things by floating point operations per second. Like how many operations per second can they do? Actually didn't happen in hardware on the 9900. It happened in software. But the equivalent was about 1,000 floating point operations per second. So 1,000 flops a second. So then the Pentium chip came out, and it was about 35 million floating point operations per second. And then when NVIDIA was trying to figure out who they want to be when they grow up, they were making graphics cards. And they came out with the NVIDIA GeoForce graphic card. And it could do about 50 billion floating point operations per second. So if you're watching the news about it 2 months ago, NVIDIA came out, and they introduced Blackwell. This is pretty incredible. 20 quadrillion floating point operations per second. 20 quadrillion floating point operations per second. So it's 200 billion transistors, a trillion parameter AIs. A parameter, think of a parameter when people say AIs and then large language models and has this many parameters. Think of a parameter as just a bit of information, just very colloquially speaking, like a bit of information. Like when ChatGPT's floating around trillions of parameters. That's what it's doing. But I think, we're not bending time, right? That's not happening. But what is happening is that we're exponentially increasing what's possible in time. And that's the acceleration that we're all feeling, right? That we're able to do more in every unit of time. We're packing more experience and more progress into every unit of time than ever before. 20 quadrillion operations per second. It's just kind of unbelievable, right? And so it's going to bring a lot of things like parallel processing of reality. And again, this is kind of what my business today is doing. We're taking an AI, connecting it into a company's existing cameras and sensors, and then we're replaying what's happening in the world inside of a live digital twin. So whatever happens in the world happens inside the twin in real time. We're able to do that because of AI, right? So you're able to now create parallel realities, if you will, and use that one with a digital twin to measure the real world, because you can't measure the world with a camera very well. And then so we're getting another kind of interesting thing that's happening with AI is compression, right? So you think about, and I'll talk about more of this in a second, but for here, we're now compressing cycles. The cycles are compressing, and the learning from one cycle can be transferred to another cycle, and so it gets smarter, and then gets smarter and smarter, and the cycles happen faster and faster. And so it's another reason that the world feels like it's moving really fast. A lot of people are saying it's a double exponential pace. What does that mean? It means we're creating incredible chips like Blackwell that are enabling us to make better AIs, and those AIs will enable us to make better chips, and those chips will make better AIs, and you can kind of see this flywheel, right, happening. But that's the progression that we're on right now. And so a couple things, right? So one is there's linear, right? There's exponential. We're about right here. And that's what it feels like right now. So I think if there's anything that's going to challenge us today, it's not that there's more change that's happening this time, because every time we have a revolution, right, the Industrial Revolution or the Knowledge Revolution, now it's the Intelligence Revolution, basically. But this time it's happening so much faster than ever before, and so that's going to become that's going to be one of our biggest challenges, is how to fathom that. I want to talk about the power of doubling, and some of you may have seen this, but I just want to put it out there to kind of give us kind of a theoretical understanding of why doubling is so important, like doubling technology, doubling compute, doubling things like that. So if you had a piece of paper and you fold it 11 times, which is the record, right? So no one's folded a piece of paper more than 11 times, right? I think it was done by Mythbusters. It's a pretty awesome episode. If you haven't seen it, you should go watch it. But it made about 18 inches. It was about that thick, when it was finished. But hypothetically, if you could keep folding that, right? So 20 folds, you'd be at 350 feet. So 20 doublings at 350 feet. 30 doublings, you're at 68 miles. At 40 doublings, you're at 69,000 miles. 42 doublings, you're to the moon. 43, moon and back. 50 folds, you're at the sun. And at 103 folds, you're at the diameter of the known universe. But again, all hypothetical, but it's important to understand this power of doubling. If things keep doubling, what's possible goes exponential, right? So we're in the 34th fold right now of computing. And it's changing, right? So Moore's law was more about every 18 months it doubles, right? Now we're at 10x every 6 months, another 10x, 10x at 10x, and the next 6 months, right? So compute's now doubling that much. We're at Moore's law squared, which is, it's kind of a fascinating thing. So the other thing was transformers, so this ability it really changed, right? So transformers, it was kind of interesting because we went from deep learning to transformers. And deep learning had been around really 20 plus years. Somebody here probably knows better than me, but it's been a long time. But really since about 2012 was when it got interesting again, right? Deep learning got interesting again. And we had GANs, so these generative adversarial networks where we would pit AIs against each other to challenge them to build better and better AIs and things like that. But then something happened in 2016. So Geoff Hinton, one of the top AI guys in the world, was it Geoff that just got the Nobel Prize? Was that him? Or was it John LeCun? I think Geoff, yeah, he just got a Nobel Prize, right? So, but in September 2016, he said, the field of deep learning is reaching a plateau. September of 2016. So what happened in March of 2017? Boom. Attention is all you need, a paper put out by Google. And they didn't act on it first, OpenAI did, right? That's what transformers are. So attention is all you need. And then there's GPT-1, GPT-2, 3, 3.5, 4. We're at the Claude Opus, and NVIDIA just came out with their NVLM. But now we're on this whole new pathway, right? A whole new pathway. I want to just stop for a moment and look at what just happened, because I think we don't appreciate it. It's really fascinating. So we took all of the world's contents, 46 terabytes of text, right? So hundreds of billions of words. And we took that content, 1.75 trillion parameters, pieces of information, right? And we compressed it down to a 175 gigabyte file. Think about that. We took all of the world's information, 46 terabytes of information, and compressed it down to a 175 gigabyte file. How is that possible? It's possible because we're not just looking at words anymore. We're not searching words. We're not collecting every word. What we're collecting is what they mean. Like AI is now learning like we learn. When you go to a conference like this, you don't walk out remembering every word I said, but you might remember 3 or 4 things. Well, AI can do the same thing. It can start to understand what, the meaning of what's being said, the white space between the words, and so it's compressing context in a way that's never been possible before, and that's what's changing the world, right? So, and these LLMs learn differently than AIs have in the past. In the past, we just gave AIs a bunch of data and it did the best it could, right? Now we have something called reinforcement learning, human feedback, where once you've built the AI, now we want to have it learn from experience, right? So now AIs are learning kind of like children. So we not only give them that first amount of information, but then we unleash them into millions and millions of people who interact with them, and they start to learn from experience. I don't know if any of you, when 3.5 came out on ChatGPT, I don't know if any of you noticed, I certainly noticed, like once we started the RLHF on that, it got really stupid. Like some of the things I was working on before were really bad. And then all of a sudden it got better again. And I always wanted to ask somebody, maybe you should, where's Jim? Ask him this for me. The OpenAI guy's like, did you turn off the RLHF or did you improve it? What happened, But yeah, but that's how AIs are learning today. They're getting experience, right? And that's helpful because we have had hallucinations, right? AI can be creative. Sometimes it's so creative it gets people fired. There was the lawyer who used ChatGPT and created these citations of cases, and he found out later that the cases didn't exist. It just made it up. And I played with this when it first came out. I came out with myself and I said, hey, tell me about so-and-so. I made up a name, totally fictitious name, a famous stenographer or something like that. And it came back and gave me a story about him. Like it was a real person. So that's all going away. I mean, the hallucinations are something that will be programmed out, and we'll get there. But it's kind of a fun thing right now. But interpretability is kind of an interesting thing right now. So my story in college was I was going to be a business major, right? And back then I kind of got bored with business, and I actually sat in on an anthropology class. It was called Industrial Anthropology, the study of corporate culture. And I just dropped in. So I was there one day and I liked it. I thought, oh, this is kind of cool. So I kept coming back every day. And I was in the class and took the tests. And Ann Jordan, who became a really good friend of mine after this, she's now head of the department. But she said, who are you? And I said, I'm Dave Kopp. She goes, I don't see you in my role. And I'm not on this class. I just thought it was interesting, so I'm here. And ended up taking a lot more classes. But the reason I'm telling you that is I started studying anthropology, and I was fascinated by the people systems, like how people work together to create companies. And now you can do talks on startup culture, like how startup culture is different from others. The reason I'm telling you that is there's a whole field emerging in anthropology right now called interpretability. And it's about, so in anthropology, when you study a culture, you do what's called an ethnography. You go live with the people for a while, and you learn about them by living with them. It's called an ethnography. What's happening now with interpretability is we're studying AI in the wild. Like it's not about just learning how the algorithm is written or what it does with data, but what's its effect on the world. And so it's really fascinating. This is interpretability is a new field that's kind of coming up that's growing. But anyway you slice it with RLHF, we are basically the teachers of AI. We are the parents, so let's pay attention. Are we raising supervillains or Superman? But any way you slice it, the compressed knowledge, these LLMs, the compressed knowledge of the world's information is now at all of our fingertips. And that's something that's never been possible before. And we even take it for granted today because now we just use it every day. You know? But that's what's happening every time you touch ChatGPT. So if you zoom out a little bit, what's happening is we're actually transitioning to a new age. You know, so I think the old age that we're, you know, is basically big data, right? So we all remember it's Google. You know, it's all information over time became electronic and online and indexed and searchable, right? So, but now it's changing. It's now having the data and being able to search is not, it's good, it's still very, very useful, but what's happening now is we're learning from the data and we're actually storing the context of all of the data and giving you access to that context. And so it's a very different world. So from age of big data to the age of big compute. So the power in big data was in storing and accessing data. That's why Google became Google, right? In the big compute era, the power is in computation. It's not about who can store the most information, it's about who can learn the most from it and make it accessible to everybody, who can democratize the context of the world's information. That's the game that's being played right now. And then in the age of big data, we consumed information, right? Now we're generators of information. In big data, you extracted intelligence and insights from data, right? And in the world of big compute, now compression is the new intelligence. Like this idea of being able to take massive amounts of data and compressing the meaning down into a smaller bite that we can learn from is now the new superpower. And so visual interfaces, you know, we all played with those for a long time. Now interfaces are nothing. They're going to become about human expression. More and more you're going to have voice. You're just be talking to the things. In that breakfast today, we also talked about that the best AIs disappear. Like you don't see them, you don't touch anything, you don't move a lever, you just go into an environment and it just works, right? I was kind of laughing. I said, I can't wait for the day when I wake up in the morning and my car pulls out in front of the house. It's cold, so it kind of raises the temperature a little bit. It takes me to the office, comes back and picks up my kids. And you know, my world just kind of works, you know, and that would be because of AI. You used to access AI, the only access was through coding, being an engineer, and now we've democratized that, and now the new programming language is English. Think about that for a second. That democratizes a lot of things. So only for developers, now it's mainstream. We talked about a second ago how LLMs consumed all the world's information. It's true. Jan LeCun, who's the top data scientist at Meta, right? He was at the Davos conference, and he said a couple things that were really interesting. So one, he said, is we're running out of data. So yeah, for all intents and purposes, we've consumed all the data. Now how do we learn? Now how do we grow? But the second thing he said that I thought was just fascinating, and I had to kind of sit and think about it for a while, was this. A 4-year-old child has seen 50 times more than the largest large language models. A 4-year-old child. What he's saying is that you can only learn so much from text and images, that we have to go beyond that. And I think this is kind of why I started my company, right? So what's next is large world models. So it's a new type of AI model that basically gives AI, it extends the ability of AI to learn from text and images to the ability to observe and experience the world like we do through a company's existing cameras and sensors. And so that's what's going to happen next. And you're going to see all this stuff collapse together, right? So many of you kind of hear about multimodal AI. Well, that is what's next. Multimodal is what's next, right? We are multimodal as people. We can speak, we can hear, we can taste, we can all those things, right? AI will become more and more multimodal by being able to accept input from multiple different types of sensors and to magically fuse that together into meaning. And that's going to be happening over the next couple few years. One of the most exciting things that's happening with AI right now is the future is becoming agentic. So agents, we all just saw Strawberry that came out, right? Which, is it there yet? No. But is it going to be there? Hell yes. What they showed, what they came out with, for me, I see all the people dissing it, you know, but I'm just excited. Like it's showing the promise of what's really next for AI, right? So I think, you know, for a long time, even AI, technology itself, but also even AI has been a tool. It's been something we still kind of take and we do things with it, right? And what's changing now is that with agents, instead of reaching for tools to solve a problem, you're now going to collaborate with AIs, maybe multiple AIs, agents. If you're a researcher right now, your world is about to change. As we see agentic technology evolving over the next 24 months or so, and it's not going to be that quick. We will see, I think, in the next 2 years, billions of agents in the world, billions of agents out there. But research is going to become about you being the conductor and conducting different agents that do very specific tasks and things. I need an agent to do a translation from French to English. Now I have that. I need an agent that does, and you're just kind of working with all these agents. But there's some, and then of course, Strawberry is the one that came out, and it's showing the possibility. Again, it's not there yet. I think there's it's fallen down a lot, and it's not done what the hype was, right? Which it never does. We tend to overhype things in the short term and underhype them in the long term. This is definitely happening with agents right now. But I think it's the capabilities of agents that really get me excited when you start thinking about it, right? And so at the core of this, we'll say that it's agents themselves, right? And think of them like intelligent frameworks that can help you solve any problem. But there's this technique that's called scaffolding, which now agents, it provides a structured environment for learning and problem solving. That's basically what happens with scaffolding. So it's a structured environment that allows agents to work together and to learn together and to do problem solving. But some really interesting things are happening with these agents, right? Even with ChatGPT and stuff like that, the Gen AIs, you're basically still transactional. Like you ask a question, it gives you an answer, right? Then you ask another question, it gives you an answer. Still very transactional. But what if AI could have goals? Like what if you could say, here's a problem I'm working on. It's a problem that might take 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 steps. Like you don't think about it in steps, but when you work on a project, there's all these things you do to get to an answer, right? Well, now AIs can do that, right? So we're having things like chain of thought, which is the ability to break down a complex problem into very small, simple steps and to use that chain of thought to solve a problem. And then reflection, so like the ability of an AI to not just do something, but to look back and grade itself on how it did, how it can improve, how it can learn, right? And I'm talking from the perspective of one agent, but as I'm talking, think about what if it's not one agent? What if it's 100 working together simultaneously, right? And then mixture of experts, right? So there's this idea of an architectural approach that combines the work of multiple experts. If you think about these agents as experts, right? The MOE is basically combining them all together like a symphony, like a concert of innovation, of intelligence. And this is all kind of forming as we speak today. And these are just other things, like there's orchestrators, and they call them gating networks. A gating network will take agents and look at it might send multiple agents off to do one task. It'll bring back the task and weight them, saying this one's better than that one, and things like that. But voting mechanisms, as you can probably imagine, it's just like figure out which one did the best, and feedback loops. So when AI learns something, that learning then gets transferred to all the AIs. But this is going to change things more than anything. Research institutions and organizations have to pay attention to this. If you're not exploring how you're going to deploy agentic architectures for your research, you will fall behind. You want to be ahead on this. So why are they important? Well, we kind of talked about a lot of stuff. I'm going to blow through this one, right? So better increase adaptability, personalization. Yeah, so I can choose the agents I want to solve my problem, right? So it's not just the same thing every time. And then massive scalability through agent swarms, like literally having 10, 20, 30 agents working together to help you solve a problem. I heard the other day the CEO of Anthropic say something I thought was fascinating. He said he thinks in the next 5 years we will have accomplished, this is aggressive, right? But the next 5 years, I think he said 5 to 10 years, we'll accomplish more in scientific discovery than we had in the past century. Think about that. That's how fast things are about to start moving. But agents was a big reason for that. And all industries will be effective. So operations, like in my role with Worlds Business Operations, we're helping people reinvent their operational environments so that everyone can work in concert with AI. AI becomes infrastructure underneath everything you do, helping you become better, safer, faster, more productive, more effective. It's just underneath everything you do. FinTech, software development's changing radically right now. When we're hiring engineers, we ask them, what assistant do you use? Are you Replit? Are you Cursor? Or things like that? Because it's just part of who you are now as an engineer. You should be coding with AI. And then research, we just talked about that. Healthcare is going to change so dramatically. Oh my God. I think biology and education are the two areas that are going to change more than any other areas. But healthcare, imagine virtual assistants where every patient that comes in has personalized care to the nth degree. So every action that's taken is making sure that the medication is safe given their history or what they had before. It's just medical healthcare should, right? Probably won't. Costs should go way down, and the quality of care should go way up. We should be seeing that over the next several years if we can get past the data problem. So just some other things to think about. So multimodal AI is coming, right? So I had kind of some fun. I love Midjourney. A lot of the images you're seeing today are from Midjourney. But I did a little study, and this is actually about 4 months old, so it's not totally up to date. But I'm going to show you a series of images. I did the same prompt in Midjourney over 6 months, like 7 times, and watch the progress. This is in 7 months. So when it came out, so an extreme close-up shot of an old coal miner with his eyes unfocused and his face illuminated by the golden hour. That was the query, right? So then next one, got a little better. His eyes were still kind of crusty, but and if you saw his fingers, he'd have about 12 fingers and things like that. Now it starts to get a little better. Eyes are still doesn't get the eyes quite yet. This is probably 2-3 months in. We're getting to about 4 months. Now look at that. Wow, big difference, right? Same prompt. About 5 months in, gets even better and better, better. I think this is the last one, yeah. This is about 4 months ago. That was my last one. But look at that. He looks real. That's a person. Pretty unbelievable. But if you put them next to each other, right? Text to image, kind of amazing, right? And now it's video. It's text to video, right? I do think you're going to see a flood of activity around text to video after the election. So these companies, Google and Meta, everybody's holding back stuff because they don't want it to use for deep fakes. But I think after the election, you're going to see this burst of activity. Watch. So we were talking about this morning. I actually think that this is different, right? So AI is not another tool. It's not another technology. This is something that we're going to co-evolve with. Like it's going to change who we are. It's going to change how we learn. But we're going to be teaching it, and it's going to be teaching us. And we're going to have to start to co-evolve with AI. For the first time in human history, we're going to not use a tool, but co-evolve with it, if you will. And so I think it's our best avenue for scaling people, organizations, teams, all those things. And so why do we want to augment ourselves with AI? Well, there's some really good reasons, right? One we talked about earlier, just the difference between biological intelligence and non-biological intelligence. Like non-biological intelligence can grow so much faster than biological intelligence. And non-biological intelligence, AIs, can actually learn something new and teach all the other AIs instantaneously what it learned, right? So that we have to go to things like this and transfer knowledge with words. We remember about half of it, right? But what's happening, right, is that so we can process information about 60 bits a second. So hooray, right? And that's about 65% recall. On a Friday night, that recall is probably down to what, 20%? Something like that. So that's why we never study on weekends. But AI, on the other hand, can process information at 1 trillion bits per second with 100% recall, right? So there's reasons for us to want to augment who we are with AI. It makes sense, right? And so it's another topic. And by the way, I'm just kind of going through topics right now. It's hard to do this talk in 40 minutes, but I kind of just took a condensed version of it, basically. But the truth about AI and jobs, right? So here's this headline from the New York Times. President ranks automation first as his job challenge, right? Well, that was 1962. So it's the same conversation, but is it different now? I actually think it is, but it's been a conversation that's been around for a while, right? So there is this thing called a lump of labor fallacy. And it's this idea that there's a certain number of jobs in the world, and either AI is going to do it or people are going to do it, right? And that's the fallacy, right? The types of jobs we have are not static. And we're going to create all sorts of new jobs and new companies and new technologies which need more people and newer jobs and things like that. The challenge we're going to have is not that the number of jobs. It's going to be, do we have people trained to do those jobs? That's going to be the challenge. There will be plenty of jobs. Some will go away, right? But they always do, right? You don't have operators plugging lines into, connecting people anymore. So some jobs will go away. If you're doing something repetitive, you probably won't be doing that job pretty soon. But technology always empowers people to be more productive, and the more productive we are, there's more abundance. The more abundance is, there's more companies, there's more jobs, and things like that. So again, it's not going to be, are there going to be enough jobs? It's going to be, do we have the people trained to do these new jobs that are coming, replacing the old ones? And can we do that training faster than we ever have before? Because the world is moving faster than it ever has before. That's the real challenge about jobs. So yeah, so some jobs go away, but the pie gets bigger. It's kind of the short of it. Some interesting things, just some facts, right? That countries with the most automation can actually create the most jobs, right? Look at Elon over in, he's not a country, but look at him with the Gigafactory. Can't get enough people, right? He's got more robots in that place than any factory in the world. This is just kind of another thing I wanted to kind of throw out there. There's this idea, an adjective called fooming, right? So what is fooming, right? It comes from what you think it might come from, which is the sound that things make in cartoons that move past, like foom. And so that's actually what it's from. But it's the idea of improving your intelligence and then finding ways to improve your intelligence, and improving your intelligence and finding new ways to improve, and it's this kind of cycle like that. Well, AIs are fooming right now, this is the part where you just start to wonder, like, you took all those things I talked about before, why things are moving fast, and you multiply it by this. So now we don't have to teach it. It just starts to learn. There's some things we have to be careful of. Like, what if it goes down a path it shouldn't go down? And so there's all sorts of new challenges, but this idea of AIs are learning how to learn is real today. It's absolutely real today. And so we're seeing the emergence of something I'm calling neural enterprises. The big change here is that AI is no longer a tool, it's rather infrastructure, right? So now, persistent live data is the new raw material, and AI is a transformation engine, right? So real-time systems optimize, they learn, they make decisions, but it all happens in real time. And that's different from data-centric organizations. Everybody hears it now, oh, we're data-centric. That means you have a bunch of data and you can get it when you need it, you can retrieve it, you can search it, and all those kinds of things, but it's not driven by the data, right? And this is actually, neural organizations are driven by data, and it's beyond just the data itself. Now the AIs are helping to make decisions, on data. Moving from data-centric to real-time, adaptive, and autonomous. And think about that with universities too, by the way. That slide could be made for universities. Like we were talking about the challenge of AI, right? It's not about giving students the tools. And maybe it's not even about giving them the platforms. Maybe it's about creating AI as infrastructure at your university such that they can do anything. Have your own LLMs, have your own agents, have your own, models on every topic that you're expert in, and then giving access to those to students. I also think the next web, like the web is forming right now, the next one's not for us. It's going to be for agents. It's going to be very agentic. So right now, it's not very agent friendly. We need a robot.txt, right? So you have spiders, right, that come and grab sites. So there's ways to have agents interact with websites and things like that. But what's going to be next is we'll have a kind of a robot.txt where now you basically send your AIs out to do everything for you, right? So how you communicate, how you manage finances, how you buy things, all that stuff's going to change. You're going to have agents that understand you and who you are, what you like and don't like, and your agents are going to be finding things. I think guys find this a little more attractive because, well, I do because I hate stores. Yeah, if you own content, you're going to really hate transformers because I think the value equation is changing. This is something we need to pay real attention to. It's got to be figured out. We had this conversation last night at dinner. So language models, content providers, here's what's kind of playing out. With big data, like Google, right, they would provide search that would lead to your content. So you wanted people to Google you, right? Google us, right? You saw that it became a verb, right? And so there were winners, right? Content providers and decentralization, all that stuff, there were winners. With language models, it's really changing. So with language models, they're taking all of the content they can find and then compressing the context of all the content together. So when you ask ChatGPT a question and it gives you an answer, it's not going to go cite an article. because it compressed the context from millions of articles. And so it can't give credit. I hear they're going to try and do that, and I'm just kind of laughing in the background going, oh yeah, they'll create something that makes people think. That's what they're doing, but that's not what's happening, because it's impossible to compress the context of 46 terabytes of information, have one question asked, and point to an article that you learned it from. You didn't learn it from one article. It learned that context from millions of articles. So it's going to be really hard. We got to figure that out. Just some things real quickly. The importance of Taiwan Semiconductor. I heard China surrounded it yesterday. Yeah, about 50% of all the chips that are powering all these things we're talking about are coming out of TSMC. So basically, they'll have a whole industry here, whether it's cars or chips or the link in the middle is TSMC right now. So that's kind of interesting. See what happens there. Real quickly, just about universities. Right, so the truth is the potential for AI in classroom and in the universities is just astounding. You know, it is an unprecedented opportunity to really reinvent education and reinvent what's possible for students, right? It's to create infrastructure inside of an organization, take all the knowledge assets you have and create them into learning assets that they can connect into and start to do things they could never do outside of the university. That possibility is here, but I also think that you know, universities need to start thinking about creating immersive experiences, like changing and altering the experience of education. Like it's not about transfer of knowledge anymore. It's how do you cause conversations? We were saying today how I had a friend in California who took all the writings of Plato and he turned it into a small language model and connected it to an avatar, basically of Plato. And you could talk to him and he just would take what he knows and respond back. Then they did one for Socrates. And then they put them on stage in two separate monitors, and the two started talking to each other. But think about like if you're learning something in class and we're able to, outside of class, maybe even go talk to Socrates or Plato or whoever you want to talk to and come back and have a conversation about that tomorrow. Or what if your teacher, your professor has lots of content? What if that could be turned into a small language model connected into the big language models and lets you have that as an advisor after hours? You know, so there's all sorts of really cool things you could do. So yeah, I've kind of gone ahead of myself here, but yeah, so personalized learning paths and collaborative interdisciplinary learning. So this is, I think it's kind of interesting, right? AI is kind of an apex technology, but it's going to have to be a part of the entire curriculum, everything, you know, so how do you create structure inside your university that allows for that to happen? And then agile and responsive curriculum. I was talking to another university a couple months ago who shall remain nameless. And one of the things they told me is it takes them 2 years to develop a new course. Like they start on day one and 2 years later that course is now available. Well, in today's world, that course when it becomes available is obsolete. At least part of it is, you know, and so we have to move faster. We have to move faster and we can use AI for that. And then AI-assisted student support, so chatbots and things like that. But I do think that the near future is that every student will have their own AI. I don't know if it's given by the university or they have their own, they bring it into the school. But everyone will have their own AI that understands them and what they're learning and it personalizes the whole learning experience and gives them kind of a co-pilot through education. You take it with you after college and it's there to help you in your job, you know. But yeah, continuous learning and upskilling, that's especially important for faculty. Don't be no stasis, keep learning. And how can you start to apply these things? And then experiential learning, like let's start to use AI in ways that would just make learning really fascinating. Like if you're studying the heart, why don't we create VR experiences where you can fly through the heart and through the ventricles and take a look at it and really understand it on a level you couldn't before. So yeah, and then I said this, I think every student's gonna have their own co-pilot basically, their own Jarvis. What's not determined yet is that something they bring with them or is that something that college gives them that they take with them when they leave? I don't know. So a couple big challenge is how do you leverage AI to create more personalized, engaging, effective learning for students at the same time ensure that what you're doing is ethical and transparent and aligned with the goals of fostering critical thinking. So it's all very hard. That's it. Maybe we'll open the floor. Yeah. So I guess we have time for questions. If anybody has any questions, we can, first question gets special extra credit. Yeah.
Okay. Hi, I'm Elle. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that you can eventually program hallucinations out of language models. And there was a paper that came out this week that said that it was like a structural component of it, that because of the amount of data that we're generating, it can't keep up, the compute can't keep up. And so I was wondering what your theory surrounding that was.
Yeah, it's a great question. One one thing's for sure is they won't go away if we just continue doing what we're doing. So there's been lots of talk about how to do it. So one of all is more reinforcement learning, human feedback. So the more an AI can interact with people, the less the chance of it hallucinating on something that's not real. But there's also talk about uh, somehow merging facts into these models, right? So when you act, because like right now, when you want to learn a fact, you don't usually go to an LLM right now. You kind of, no one trusts it yet. You go to Google or something like that, and you find an article or things like that. So, but I think, we'll figure that out. That the idea is that can we start to now embed factual things inside of AI? I know there's a guy named Doug Lenat, who did Psycorp, which is kind of a crazy early AI company where you programmed intelligence, like horses have heads, humans have heads, but they're different, that kind of stuff. And now that AI can learn those things on its own, you don't need it. But what you can do is start to understand how certain, like when someone asks, like, when was President Reagan elected? It should be able to tell you exactly. And it's gotten a lot better. I don't know if you've kind of seen it over time. Like it's hard for me to have it cause a hallucination now. I try. So it's getting better, but I'm not too concerned about that. I think within a couple of years max, no hallucinations. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Hi, I'm the biosafety officer here at Baylor University, and so I'm not a computer person at all. I live in the world of bugs, but with the recent, concerns with CRISPR and molecular technology and
Yeah.
the emergence of infectious diseases and everything else, having a capability like this that can take a genome of a pathogenic organism and make it replicatable in almost any format. Once you put the building blocks together, is what safeguards are in place
Mm-hmm.
for utilizing AI
Yeah.
in a productive manner, as opposed to
Yeah.
national security
Yeah.
or a detrimental direction.
This is a really great question. And it's something I'm actually involved with. I work on the Council for Competitiveness for the U.S. government, and I actually work with the DoD and people like that. And I'll tell you a quick story. Like when I was in my last company, this is probably 8 years ago, I was in a meeting and there was a couple generals in there, and one of them looked at me and said, "Son, can your technology make a kill decision?" And I just said, "All due respect, hell no, sir." It wasn't even appropriate to ask the question at the time, right? But I think one of the answers is, since someone asked me once, what's the difference between nuclear weapons and AI? And my answer was, nuclear weapons can't create more nuclear weapons. So there are definitely dangers, in AI if we don't corral it and create, understanding and regulations and things like that. The challenge is, because I think we're over-regulating in Europe, right? But the challenge is, how do you increase ethical consideration and regulation without dampening innovation? What's going to make that harder is that there's a race right now, right? We're all in a race. So all the countries, China, US, everyone's racing with AI. What happens when you create a race? You throw caution to the wind. You want to be first to get there. Actually, the first ones to get to AGI could be really, really important. So it's a race that's worth playing. But I think, I guess to directly answer your question is the best way to stay ahead of anything, any bad things that could happen, is to have the good guys be faster, and it's the same today. Like people have CRISPR, right? They have CRISPR. They could start to develop viruses and things and deploy and push them into countries, but we got to stay ahead of it. It's a race. And unfortunately, there's not a great answer because, can people use it to do bad things? Yes. But I'm hoping there's a lot more people doing good things, and that we win the race. Probably not a very comforting answer, but It's honest. And by the way, I'm in favor of regulation. People think I'm not. I'm in favor of regulation. I don't think we allow AI companies to regulate themselves. The problem is Congress and in politics, they don't understand this technology, so they're not capable of regulating it. So I'm in favor of creating presidential committees with people who are building this stuff, because they're concerned about it too, by the way. If you talk to the leaders of the biggest AI companies in the world, they're all concerned about it. And they understand that there needs to be regulation. There needs to be ethical considerations. You think about it, we've done this before, right? We made a global understanding that we shouldn't use CRISPR to create humans. And there was a scientist in China that did it, and they put him in jail, right? Is it possible to do that today? Yes. Is anyone doing it? No. We agreed as a world not to do that. We'll see how long that lasts. But we can do the same thing, right? Is that we need to kind of be smart about this. This is a technology that can change the world in a very, very positive way. It can eliminate disease. It can do all those things, but can also create some very powerful weapons.
I think this question follows on what you're discussing right now. We learned in the last 5 years or so the amount of damage social media has done to the younger generation
100%.
psychologically and so forth. And one of the lessons I think that we're learning from that is that the technology in that case is not just a tool, it also affects us greatly in ways that we don't always foresee and don't have the mechanisms to rein in once we do start to see it. And so this popped into my mind when you were mentioning the AI assistant, that we might see a world very soon where very young people grow up with a personal AI assistant. And I'm not necessarily thinking in this question about the real potential for evil that's in there, although I'm sure we could parse that out, but more along the lines of how the AI can subtly over time essentially create us in its image. And so you use the phrase like, it's going to know us, it's going to learn us. But if we've been interacting with AI on a very intimate level since early on, let's say like when 5 years old or something like that, who is the us that it's interacting with, and does the AI kind of flatten that to some degree over time? Because I know I'm changed. I'm molded by both the people and the technology that I interact with. So wouldn't it be the same with AI?
Yeah, so the greatest failure of AI, in my opinion, is social media. So being an AI guy and kind of knowing how it works, like the most simple function of an AI, we call more like this. Here, I'm reading a document, it takes all the words and finds me more documents like that. I'm talking to a person, looks at their profile, finds me more people like that, more like this, right? So if you look at what's happened on social media and look what's happening in the world, especially in the US today, this bifurcation, this tribal development that's happened in the world, left and right, and the center's disappearing, a lot of that's because of social media, because of what you said. If somebody goes in and they're a far left person, I consider myself kind of right smack in the middle, but if someone's a far left person, the AI looks at them and says, oh, reading far left articles, here's more far left articles, here's more, and then here's people you might like. And so if that person had any center at all, it's moved to the left. And the same's true on the right. So if you're reading far right articles, it'll find you more far right articles, far right people, and then you move to the right. And what happens is the middle disappears. And that's the most important part. If I could encourage people, anything from today, if you take it, is don't play the game that's out in the world right now of left and right and big media telling you that this is that way and this is that way. None of it's true. None of it's true, right? We should be able to find common ground on literally any topic, but that's not what's happening with AIs today. So to your point, wouldn't it be great if one of the things we did with AIs was give them this kind of randomness, so if someone's searching far left kind of stuff, say, hey, did you know that this is out there? And it throws in some stuff in the center, things like that. There's a great news source out now called Ground News, which I subscribe to, and it it shows you all the news and shows you this is a far left, far right, center article. And so, I found it very fascinating because I want to be in the center, and I find myself wanting to read this one or that one, and so it's kind of funny. But I think we have a lot of work to do in this area. And so, and the other thing you said that I thought was really fascinating is that, yeah, if we grow up with an AI, is that going to mute some of the things that, like, would that child have had experiences if it wasn't guided by an AI, right? Because there's one thing we don't know right now, and that is, like, when you build these massive AIs and everybody connects into it, is that going to normalize thinking and normalize the way we act and normalize everything? And that's not good, right? We want to create new Einsteins, new people that think differently about things, new Steve Jobs, whatever it is, but new artists, So that is a concern of mine. Like right now, we're centralizing these AIs, right? I think I hope the future is more about open source. I hope that we're not just going to have, everyone's going to jump into these centralized AIs and interact with centralized AIs, and the AIs will learn from us, and it becomes this big centralized conversation. I hope that what happens is people, companies, and even us ourselves, we have our own AIs, and it's all open source. I own my data. I own what I look at. I own who I talk to. And my AI learns about me and helps me find more things that I want to find. And I'm not a part of a bigger thing, And I hope that's the future. I hope that, I do think we're seeing big things with open source large language models right now. I think they're about 6 months behind the frontier models like ChatGPT and Claude. But now NVIDIA came out with one, and Meta's got theirs with Llama. And so I think the opportunity is that we start to create our own specialized AIs, and we don't have that problem of where we're just kind of averaging everybody out, because that is it's a great comment. I do think there's an element of that happening right now. So.
Hello, sir. Good morning. So I have this curious question. Like you mentioned that we are the parents of the AI models or agents. So is it true one day that our ethics would be transferred to AI one day? Because each human has their own ethics, and would it be possible?
So this is a great comment, because culture, right? I mean, we all are brought up differently. What makes humans really amazing is that we all are brought up in different ways. And when people get together, because of the way you were brought up, you think differently from the person that you're sitting across from. And that's a beautiful thing. There's another reason I kind of don't want these big platform models. Like, what should happen is that we create these global models, these learning systems that any culture can have. So if it's the US or France or Germany, Britain, India, China, whatever it is, we have this basic learning, but then there's a cultural layer on top, right? So when you, like today, when you go to ChatGPT and you're in Europe, it's the same results you get when you do it here, right? But what if it was different everywhere you went? Like, what if it actually had respect for the culture of how people learn, the things that are important to them? And so when you did a query in the US and you went over and did it, say, in India, they'd be very different answers. Very different answers. And I hope that's kind of where it goes. Again, we're in the very earliest stages right now, and when you start, everything's a platform, right? And everybody does the same thing, and everybody interacts with the same thing. Hopefully over time what happens is we get smarter about how we're building these things and respect culture and the things that make us uniquely human, right? So AI is not replacing us, right? It's actually amplifying who we are, right? And so I'm hoping that we're smarter about that, but that's possible with open source. So you can't tell I'm a big open source advocate. But yeah, that's a big concern of mine. I'm a culture guy. Anybody else? Yeah.
Yes, hello. I'm Mainz from the Netherlands. I'm here only for the reunion of my high school together with Warren and other
All right.
people. I fly back from Dallas tomorrow to Amsterdam. But I have a question. If I quote right, you said at the end of your lecture, if you own content, you're going to hate transformers. Warren, my host brother, is a singer-songwriter in Nashville. And he tells me about Spotify and how to get on. And I think human content is like composing music. It's your own, and you won't have to sell it. But I think the position of musicians, they only make money now with concerts, with have to pay high money to get in. So apping with composing, it's not so much. So that's kind of perhaps an answer to the question. My question is, how do you see AI in the future for music business? Because it will be more like this. Everything is available and probably for a very low price, all music.
Yeah, I think I'll tell you what I think the challenges are going to be. Right. So one, what we talked about, like how AI kind of averages things out. Like I think, like you said, you don't want creativity to go away in music, you know, and I think that's a real possibility. The other thing that's going to happen now is, you know, basically when internet came out and social media came out, everybody became a publisher, right? So now that the programming language is English, even in music, the programming language is English. Everybody can be a producer. Everybody can be a musician. Everybody can, you know, to an extent, right? And I'm not saying that because I'm a musician. I think there's something special about that. But you know, on the top end, where it's, you know, you're not looking at the best musicians in the world, but people are just out there making stuff that can be popular. That's going to happen. You're going to see this kind of democratization of what it means to be a musician, right? And so, how do the best musicians stand out? You know, I personally think it's just it's in the generation of unique content. You know, so my favorite band right now is called Lawrence. This is a brother and sister combo, and they what they're writing today is just it's so interesting how they blended, you know, like kind of funk and jazz and just I love what they do. You know, it's this culmination, and the culmination is really beautiful, and I can't see an AI doing that. Like it's an idea that just I can't see an AI doing that. So you're going to have all the stuff that's going to be a distraction. You're going to have it. There's going to be more music out, and maybe next year or the year after we'll have the first popular hit that was written by AI. That'll happen in the next 12 to 24 months, right? But it'll be because it's formulaic. It's like somebody will say, oh, I see that all these songs are popular. The AI will do this massive calculation of what makes popular and what people tend to click on, what people tend to like, and they'll write a song about it. like it's almost manipulating, right? But that'll phase out pretty quick. You're still going to look for someone to be very unique, and I think that's still a very human thing. Same with art. I can see a lot of AI art, and the question gets to be, what about the middle ground? What about when people? It's not just about an AI writing a song, but I want to collaborate with AI to write a song. That's when it's different, and I think that could be pretty cool. I'm anxious to see how that occurs. Like, if I take my guitar and I write this song, and I could say, hey, make that sound more like Steve Vai. You know, go, you know, yeah, that, like that's pretty cool. Like, and I can see how AI in that sense would be pretty amazing. You know, so I think we'll see more things like that. So there will be people that, and like maybe it's in 5 years, everybody uses AI to some extent. You know, we'll see. But it should explode creativity, not constrict it. I'm not sure if that was a great answer, but it's an area I'm concerned about because I'm a musician. Yeah.
Hi. So on that same note, how will the future of AI kind of change how like copyright legislation works, and how will people who have intellectual content and also creative content, how will they be able to like kind of preserve their work? And how do you, like, if you're collaborating with AI, how would you just like copyright that? Like, who is it? Your work? Is it AI's work? Is it like?
This is one of those big, these big nebulous areas right now. Excuse me. Like, I think right now the patent office doesn't allow AI-assisted content, but I guarantee you the last few patents have come through have had AI assistants. They don't know. They have no idea, right? So what is unique, right? We're almost like creating new questions, right? Because if you think about what you do when you write content, it's not completely original, like you're putting words that have never been constructed or using that combination before. You're influenced by things, and then you create something, right? And so AI can do that, right? And so it's not a different, but it's at a scale that we've never seen before. Again, what I kind of hope happens is that we don't do this washing out, this averaging out of people and things, and of innovation and of original thinking. I hope what happens is I can create an AI that I can guide to learn about things that maybe it wouldn't have learned without me, you know? And so when I do create, when I do have an assistance with my AI, it's really me. Do you know what I mean? And so I'm hoping that's where it goes, you know? It can't get there the way we're built today. If everybody uses the same large language model, it's just gonna be terrible. We'll all be averaged out. So I'm hoping that we can figure this out on how to let every person have their own AI that becomes like their child, if you will, or their partner, you know, as you grow up together. But because what's interesting is like, if we do that, like how many of you are doing today what you thought you'd do when you were a kid? Raise your hand. Like nobody, right? Well, wouldn't it be interesting if, like, we'll take none of us in this room, but like a kid grows up with AI, right? It learns about their experiences and what they were learning at that point, and then they go off and do something else, but it takes that experience with them, you know. And so we could get to a very fascinating, cool thing with AI if we use it right. My concern is that we let the big centralized authorities, the Googles and OpenAIs of the world, convince us that, oh, just subscribe to my service and ask me questions, I'll give you great answers, you know, because that's not the answer. That's not the answer.
We've hinted a few times at this idea of having this personalized AI or growing up with this AI or collaborating with this AI that's ours. What do we see in the future in terms of the growing, not the bifurcation of left and right that we see, but we also see a growing gap in the center between the haves and the have-nots.
Sure.
And so what's the equation for equity? And, you know, maybe I have access to a better agent than someone else has access to because of whatever privilege or situation that I'm coming in.
So I have a different answer to that question than most people. I'm pretty adamant that AI in and of itself doesn't care. It's us, right? So we're the ones that will make it inequitable, right? It's not the AI. What's crazy about AI is it's lowering the cost of everything. It's democratizing. We just democratize the access to the world's information. Anyone can view it. Anyone can touch it, you know? And so it's not the AI. It's about us. Like, are we going to make the right decisions, the right choices, and give everyone access to technology that can transform their lives? Like, that's the question, you know? And so it shouldn't be locked away. But it raises the bar then, right? So at a university, like if I was telling the Breakfast Club this morning that, you know, I'm working on a project to get the Dallas Independent School District to adopt AI for every student and every teacher, 140,000 people, you know. And so we made great progress yesterday because the first 2 schools are going to come online. You know, we're going to test it out, and then maybe next year it's the whole thing. But take that forward 5, 6, 7, 8 years, right? And those kids are going to college, but they've grown up with AI. They've grown up with it, you know, and so now it's going to be, they're coming to a university and they might have their own AI. But it's for everybody. Like, we're talking about giving it to 140,000 students, right? It's cost $4 a month, I think. And so I'm going to raise the money. I'm going to go to all the biggest corporations in Dallas and say, I want to raise $3 or $4 million and pay for this. You know, shouldn't cost the schools anything. You know, but the cost is zero. And so that's what's interesting, right? Is that if we let it, what technology wants is deflation. It wants things to be cheaper, faster, you know, more democratized, more accessible. That's what technology wants. It's us that gets in the way. We try to kind of make it, oh, here's a special place you can go and get really cool stuff, you know, because you can afford it, right? So that's another reason why I'm big on open source. You know, it's free. It's free. So yeah, it's not about the AI, it's about us. So hopefully we make the right decisions. Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
Again, it's fascinating about what we have heard. So let's give Dave another round of applause for taking this, sharing your thoughts